Well, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me fine? Yeah, the microphone is working. Okay, good. Okay, let's see. So, volume is better? Okay, good. So, first of all, thank you very much, Amit, for inviting me. Thank you, Varun, also, who actually met me in Madrid some months ago and invited me to join this meeting. And for me, it's a privilege and honor to be invited to address, at least share some of my thoughts with you. I know there are many distinguished leaders from the Indian business school world out here. And I know that you're all doing some very interesting, innovative sort of programs and running very important institutions. And so I also hope to learn from you in some of my own interactions with you after the presentation. Now, today's topic is about education in the age of disruption. And what I can tell you is that this is something on the minds of almost all education leaders today. I will be sharing some of my own perspectives with you. And what I hope is that you can put some of my perspectives in sort of comparison or contrast to your own views. And together we can perhaps find some directions that might be actually valid for our own industry. Let me begin with just a brief background in terms of how I got into MBA education. It was by accident because my doctoral studies was in computer science, in fact in artificial intelligence. And I met my wife when I was doing a PhD studies, and she was on a Fulbright scholarship, and that required her to leave America and go back to her home country in Europe for 2 years. And so I happened to get the job offer in a business school. I did not know what a business school was really. And I happened to join a young business school in Europe called INSEAD. Well known in Europe that time mainly, but not really well known outside Europe at all. I remember in India people asked me like, which school are you working in? Like, what is this, INSEAD school? Of course, what happened was INSEAD became a global success story. Sometimes you're lucky to join institutions that are rising, good leadership, good entrepreneurial drive. And I enjoyed staying 20 years out there. So I got into business schools by accident. And then in 2011, Cornell came to me and asked me whether I wanted to join as the dean of the business school out there, because Cornell had just won a major competition in New York City to set up a campus focused on the digital economy in New York City. So Mayor Bloomberg had this vision that technology entrepreneurship was very important for the future of New York City as an economic entity. And he said that for creating a technology innovation ecosystem, you need a top technology university in the heart of the city. So he held a competition, major schools competed, Stanford, Cornell were the two finalists, Cornell won, and they needed someone to be able to help the integration of technology and business. So I was brought in to lead the business side. I guess my technology background was useful. And I stayed there for 11 years. And then last year, I moved to Oxford. And Oxford is another absolutely unique place. And it's a delight to be there now in my current position. So I have sort of seen different parts of global education and business from different perspectives. And I just thought I'll share with you a little bit in terms of what I see happening around us. And I'll focus today in my my first presentation, because I have a second time I'm speaking later in the day, on much more what I see in general terms, what is technology doing to us. In the second presentation that I have in the afternoon, I'll talk a little bit more specifically about India and how I see it applying to Indian context more directly. Can I have yeah, thank you. So, let me begin with this simple simulation. I often begin with this very simple simulation because it shows you something very important. This is a lake getting filled up. It starts in 1940 and goes on till 2025. And what you will see is that till 2010, you hardly see any blue. And then suddenly, in fact, it explodes. Let me see if I can show you that simulation once again. Can we go back? Yes. Okay. Okay. Can you just click on the you just move the mouse? Yeah. Click on that. Now, this lake is a Lake Michigan, and the water is getting filled at Moore's law. Okay. Basically, 1 ounce. Next year, double it. 18 months, double it. Every 18 months, keep doubling the amount of water. Starting in 1940, you don't see any blue for 70 years, till 2010. And then in 2010, you see the blue exploding. Think about Moore's law in practice. Started in 1960s. Today is roughly 60 plus some years of existence, showing no signs of slowing down. In fact, it's speeding up. All the physical signs of progress is that Moore's law is speeding up. Now, what this means basically is that technology is progressing exponentially. The exponential progress, you don't often see it in the start. And then there's a tipping point when the curve takes off vertically. We are now at the stage of technology progress when that vertical rise is happening. 60 years after Moore's law started, after the microprocessor was invented, now we see the real power escalating dramatically. So if you think you have seen progress in technology, if you think that, yes, my mobile phone today is much more powerful than the one 5 years ago, you haven't seen anything as yet. Your phone in 5 years' time will be dramatically much more powerful. What is possible today and seems impossible today will be so much more easily feasible in 5-10 years' time. And this progress is not slowing down by any means. In 2010, there was a time when people thought that the technology progress is reaching physical limits of manufacturing and we are sort of reaching a plateau in Moore's law. But that was a false plateau. Once again, the technology progressed dramatically. And on the horizon is quantum computing, which will speed up things by a factor of 10 times or even more. So we're looking at a situation where there's dramatic progress. And this is something that you are seeing most dramatically today in the world of AI. AI, as you all know, is not a new field. It's something which has been there for 60 years, 70 years, as long as computing. In fact, I did my doctoral thesis in AI 30 years ago. But what has changed dramatically is the amount of data available and the amount of computation power available to process the data. Now, these are some of these sort of large language models. And if you look at the first version of GPT, which was in 2018, not that long ago, okay, 2018, 2019, so roughly about 4.5 years ago, was 110 million parameters. It ends in GPT-3 with 175 billion, and today is GPT-4 roughly between 1 trillion and 10 trillion. Okay, now it's confidential data, proprietary, they don't disclose it completely, but that's what the estimate is. The current versions of these large language models are becoming very huge. Now, there's also debate about large language models, having small models and how to make it more computationally tractable. But what is important for you to understand is that kind of exponential progress in the amount of data that is being churned is dramatic. And it's all moved from 110 million parameters to 1 trillion or more parameters in about 5 years' time. The human brain is roughly between 10 trillion and 100 trillion neuron connections. So it's a matter of time, 1 or 2 years, before the capacity of processing of GPT-like systems reaches human brain capacity. Now, human brains, we can't actually add more neural connections to our brains. GPT doesn't stop. If computing keeps on increasing, this will keep on growing. What happens when you have the power of hundreds and thousands of human beings sitting in a small box out there? Now, what is also interesting is to understand how the real processing potential of this technology has changed. Let me give you some examples of real data. Okay, it is real data. So, if you look at this example, which is vision, and see how machines are doing compared to human beings. So, they have these large databases. In this case, one database which is very popular is called ImageNet. It contains millions of data images given by people, and they do tests to see how well does the machine recognize an image and a human being recognize the image. As you can see, since 2017, machines are better than human beings. And today, that's the reason why in many immigration, highly sensitive areas, people use image recognition. Why? Because machines do it better than human beings. And ultimately, what pattern recognition is out here, image recognition, is really about recognizing patterns in large numbers. Because how a machine sees a data, it doesn't see it as a picture like we see it visually. What happens is you divide it into pixels. Each pixel has some values of a signal of different colors, and you feed those numbers. The machine sees a picture as a series of long numbers, and it sees a pattern in the numbers through its own processing capabilities. Think about it, how much in real life, what a large part of decision making is about recognizing patterns. Patterns in sales data, patterns in machine operational data, patterns in city traffic, other kinds of data about systems. A large part of what we human beings do is really analyzing patterns in data. And today, the undeniable fact is machines are better than human beings at recognizing patterns in data, especially large, complex, multidimensional patterns. If you look at, for example, the area where machines are not as good is in question answering and common sense reasoning. If I give you a statement like, the old man's glasses are broken. Do you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, you probably understand what I'm saying. What do I mean by glasses? Reading glasses, most likely. Not drinking glasses, right? Could be drinking glasses too. And we disambiguate using world knowledge. What is the world knowledge in this case is that as people get older, the eyesight becomes weaker. If you have weaker eyesight, you have glasses as corrective mechanisms. And a lot of old people from habit, we know, like to read something. So we put all that world knowledge together to say, well, the glasses actually is reading glasses most likely in this case. We do it naturally. And the same thing is true in almost any kind of a cooking recipe, break 2 eggs, beat, mild this thing, whatever. So we have a lot of language we use, which use a lot of common knowledge. How do you find the eggs? Go to the market, open the refrigerator. The recipe book doesn't tell you all that. It assumes you'll figure that out, okay? Because human beings have common knowledge. Now, this common sense knowledge has been extremely difficult to capture. When I was studying my AI studies 30 years ago, there were big projects running, researchers trying to run projects, trying to capture knowledge, actually saying, well, X can be found in a refrigerator, X come from chickens, X come from in the marketplace, and trying to capture all the knowledge. And what you find is that it is almost impossible to capture all the knowledge because so many variations, so many differences, so many different locations, and so on. So capturing that knowledge effectively, common sense knowledge, proved to be the hardest thing for machines to do. It's still very hard. But what these large language models like GPT have done is that they have taken this collective knowledge of the World Wide Web and distilled it into some kind of understanding of that common sense knowledge. And that's really what is powerful about the large language models, is that they're solving that problem of common sense knowledge, which was very difficult for machines to do. And today, just by looking at this World Wide Web, they're able to look at patterns in sentences, patterns in text, and simulate the sense of a worldwide knowledge base, common sense knowledge. Okay, so that's something which is very important. This is something which is remarkable because these large language models have also shown how to do text handling. Handling text was always very difficult in machines because of that common sense knowledge. The old man's glasses were broken. If I gave that sentence to a machine, it would not be able to understand that sentence properly. Today, with the techniques that are there, they're actually able to understand it much more easily. Why? Because they go and look at all the different references of all people and glasses, and they say statistically this is what actually is the most likely. Ultimately, that's what is happening in the LLMs, a statistical analysis of large volumes of textual data and image data from the web. But here you see it's only in 2021 that this kind of ability has really become very important. If you look at creativity, a lot of people say, well, machines can do the analysis stuff. But human beings, we are creative, we show empathy. And that's really our core. Today what you find is that in some highly creative sectors, whether it's in fashion design, industrial design, I'm on the board of a large company called Dassault Systems, and they have databases of industrial parts for car manufacturers, and the software basically suggests and provides options to the industrial designer about what to design for the product, for the part. Similarly, out here, the software that analyzes social media images and tells the designer, well, this color, this kind of a dress, this kind of a skirt length actually is more popular. Maybe you can use that in design. So today, a lot of software already is suggesting design options to designers in highly creative sectors. And this is the reality today. Why? Because in the fashion industry, as we all know, waste is an endemic problem. Before traditionally, most fashion houses only sold about 30% of the products they manufactured because they always guess wrong. And that's why they were criticized for burning the inventory. Fashion houses routinely burn the inventory to keep the prices high as opposed to give it away at a lower discounted price. Now, if you think about empathy, how many of you seen the movie Her, H-E-R? Have you seen the movie Her? It's a wonderful movie. If you haven't seen it, see it. 2013, and it talked about a man who falls in love with his operating system. In 2014, Microsoft released this bot in China called Zhongse. And today, this bot, Zhongse, is the girlfriend of more than 600 million Chinese males. Okay? This is a real-life version of Her. Exactly the same story. And by the way, this is not just a silly thing. This is a serious emotional support for many single, lonely men. Similar systems are being used for providing emotional support to teenagers who often have troubled emotional problems. and they don't feel comfortable speaking to their parents or to the teachers. So now you combine these three things: analysis of data, creativity, understanding different creative options, and empathy. You look at the power of technology. Okay? The direction which technology is moving is extremely powerful. And technology is not stopping. Today, for example, people say that, well, ChatGPT did not do this, or it made that mistake. Yes, the technology is only 3 years old. What might happen in 5 years' time from now? We cannot sit here and predict that. And we cannot make assumptions that we know what's going to happen because that's what we saw 2 years ago, so it's going to be the same 3 years from now. Why? Because this is the real challenge for us in education, and this is the real challenge for us in every sector. So when I consult or interact with CXOs in any company, a bank or retail company, this is the graph I tell them. This should be in your mind, all the time. You should be dreaming about this. You should be, thinking about this all the while. The gap that is growing between the potential of what is possible and what our organizations are designed to do. We as human beings, our organizations are designed to essentially operate and change linearly, while technology is moving exponentially. I just spoke about digital technologies. Situation is much more dramatic. Why? Because today you're seeing a combination, a trifecta of three revolutions. The digital revolution, which I have described, the biological revolution, which I haven't spoken about, which is equally dramatic in terms of gene editing and all the other kind of gene processing costs, and the physical revolution of 3D manufacturing. Manufacturing is becoming virtualized also. You combine the three, the physical, digital, and biological, you see the tremendous amount of change that is happening around us. And this is transforming industries completely. Whether it's pharmaceuticals, whether it's COVID vaccine testing. I don't know how many of you know this, but 70% of the COVID vaccine trials were done in software, not done on human beings. Traditionally done on human beings, but now there's so much software data available that they can simulate the control group. You don't need to actually have a physical control group. And this ability to simulate things are going to keep on becoming better and better. And I always am shocked that in education, we operate with such limited data. We hardly know anything about the learning habits, learning challenges, learning strengths and weaknesses of our students. We hardly know anything about the key actors, the professors who are teaching. How do we measure them? Our measurement systems are so weak as compared to what is possible right now. As they become better, our ability to actually change also will improve. So this gap is going to grow exponentially, and this is our biggest challenge. How do we navigate this gap? Let me share with you some data out here that will give us some perspectives. Earlier, the comment was made about the automobile sector, and that is true. Till about 20 years ago, almost all the advances that came in the field first came to the automobile sector. That was the sector studied as the place where the most advanced practices were adopted. This is a study of the last disruption in automobiles 100 years ago, when the engine was invented. Today, the whole sector is going through a huge upheaval right now as we speak. Now, this study shows the number of innovations, the major innovations in the sector, the number of new entrants, the number of firm exits from the sector. This is data just for America. What you see out here is that when there's a new disruptive technology, there's a whole bunch of new companies entering the sector. Why? Because they're going to discover, what does this new technology enable? What is possible? What does a product look like with the new technology? A lot of innovations takes place, major innovations, and then at some point the tide shifts, the number of major innovations starts decreasing, and the number of exits start increasing. Basically, companies consolidate, they go bankrupt, they merge, and the industry consolidates. And that's a very good sign. In our industry, by the way, education, where are we? The number of entrants is increasing or decreasing? Increasing, okay? Partly because the demand is there, but partly also because people are trying to discover, what does education look like? What model will fly? What model will dominate the future? So we are in the process of people entering the business right now. And that's going to become more accelerated in the future. Now, in this kind of scenario, what happens out here is that this shift from entering to exiting happens at a time when a certain model gets accepted as a dominant model. In the car industry, it happened in 1926 when Dodge introduced that steel closed body of a car, 4 wheels, driver in front. That model of a car exists even today, 100 years later. Even 100 years later, all our cars look the same. They might be different inside, but the fundamental shape and structure is the same. Now, the question which is very interesting is, how is this innovation linked to culture? Because that's one of the key points for us in our organizations. So you see innovation going, huge focus on disruptive innovation, decreasing, and then a huge focus on incremental innovation. You don't actually want to keep rediscovering a car. You know what a car looks like, but you want to make the car cheaply, reliably, high quality, meeting the customer's expectations. That's the phase of incremental innovation. Now think for a second about the kind of culture required to excel in those two different parts of the curve. So if you look at the left-hand side, when you have a disruptive innovation, what do you need? A new technology is there. You have to discover what is possible with new technology. You need a classical startup culture. No hierarchy, a lot of R&D, a lot of mistakes, a lot of tolerance for new ideas, a lot of communication, a lot of entrepreneurial skills. Very typical of what you think you identify with a startup company. Okay? That's what you need to succeed in that, because you have to discover what the new idea looks like and feels like. If you go to the other side, you come to incremental innovation. What does that look like? Very different. There you need much more formal organizations, much more well-defined processes, more rules, more sort of focus on quality efficiency. You don't want big changes, because big changes will disrupt your system. You want to have steady changes, small changes. How much more time do I have, Amit?
2 to 4 minutes.
Okay, that'll be a challenge for me, but I'll try to make it happen. So, 5, thank you. So you see the different culture, very, very important. Now keep in mind that all the traditional techniques that we have adopted in management, around total quality management, Kaizen, Agile, everything, all these things are more oriented towards the right. Look at your cultures in your organizations. I can put money on the table and say it is towards the right. Okay, most stable organizations have a culture of making small changes. We have become very good at doing small changes. We are not very good at This large change is not because we're not bright, not because we don't have good people, it's simply because the culture does not support it. Now, the challenge is really out here that it's very difficult to predict the future. The classical statement of Henry Ford. If I asked customers what they wanted, they could not imagine what a world with cars looked like. And this is the challenge for us. We know a world that we know, but we can't imagine what a world will look like without professors, for example. That's almost impossible for us to actually think about carefully. So really, when you look at digital transformation today, you have this dual challenge. On one hand, you have a current business. You have whatever school you're running, and you have to keep on improving it because technology improves what you're doing today. That's normal. You automate some things, you put in virtual learning, you improve things what you're doing. At the same time, technology is allowing new things to happen, and you don't know what they look like exactly. So what do? You do experiments. You've got to try out different things. See which experiment works, which one doesn't work, and then bring the two together. So this dual challenge of building forwards and creating backwards is the key challenge in digital transformation. The harder part is the experiments and creating backwards. Linking the future to your current organization in an effective organizational way. So my last two slides, this one and one more. How do you organize yourself for this? This is what is important for all of us. I would say there are two broad approaches. And this is from my own research, industry practice. Either you have what I term as an inside-out approach. You can say, well, look, I have my current operations, I have my current employees, I have great people, I have great customers. I will work with what I have to create the new disruptive ideas. And people try to do it now by, for example, creating innovation marketplaces, getting ideas, and trying to support those ideas and say, okay, well, look, your idea is winning, I'll give you some money and go and try out the idea. By creating green fields, by trying out different kinds of corporate venturing schemes, like an external venture fund, I create my own corporate venturing fund. So the different kinds of either centralized, decentralized mechanisms you can have for inside-out kind of approaches. The contrasting approach is outside-in, which is where you say, well, I will look outside and see which startup, which organization is doing interesting new ideas, and I will partner with them or sometimes acquire them, effectively building a strong learning relationship out there. Now, most companies that are in stage of disruption do both. But the preferred approach is which one? Inside out or outside in? Outside in now more and more. Why? Simply because it is faster. Not necessarily it works always because cultural issues are tremendous, just simply because it is faster. That's the reason why Apple, Microsoft acquire about 70 plus companies every year. Because they're constantly making bets on which ideas, what kind of new technologies will work. They don't know precisely themselves. And they're making bets. Look at the bet that Microsoft made with OpenAI. 1 billion 5 years ago, today it's at a jackpot. Okay? Many of the bets of Microsoft didn't work. So not every bet works, but that requires you to in fact have that courage to make bets and take risks. My last slide out here, so Amit, don't get nervous. So here you have the most important point I'd like to say, and this is the same challenge that I face, is that we don't know what the future will look like. And we think we are so bright, high IQ people that we can predict the future. The reality is that we have to be humble and accept we cannot predict the future. Accepting that is the most important barrier. Okay, the faculty will say, I know my student, I love, student loves me, I love the student. Now we know we have a great relationship. That might all be the case, but maybe neither one can predict the future. And predicting the future is the biggest challenge we have. And because we cannot do it, we have to experiment. And conducting experiments has to be both internal and external. So outside-in approaches are very important out here. And you have to be able to focus on that last word out here, learning. The rate of learning is the most important criteria for success in digital transformation. So that's really what I wanted to convey to you today in terms of how digital technologies are really disrupting us. And I question whether our industry is learning fast enough, because the COVID forced us to learn at a fast pace for 3 years. And what I see now is everywhere people are going back, going back to the comfort zone. And in fact, trying to say what we learned, maybe didn't work, so we go back. In fact, the idea should be that maybe it didn't work completely. Let's try and improve on that and try something different. But the general reaction is let's go back to the comfort zone. And that's happening worldwide, worldwide. And that's a challenge for our industry, because the dominant pressure is to go back to the comfort zone. So thank you very much, and thank you for your patience and allowing me a few more minutes. Thank you.
I think the clap should be louder. We would have to travel all the way to US or Europe to hear this remarkable address. So we've saved a lot of Indian dollars, Indian currency. So for that, one more time, huge round of applause. And let me put the cherry on the great cake by inviting a few questions from this very distinguished audience. We will squeeze the next session by 10 minutes, because I can't let the opportunity go to invite a few questions from the audience. I only request the questions to be very sharp. You have only about 10 or 15 seconds to ask the question. Mic there, and let's go, with your permission, sir, for a few questions.
I'll keep my answer short also.
Mic quickly here. Okay. Mr. Ramana, who's worked with the Atal Incubation Center, please.
Wonderful lecture, Professor, and great to hear you. My question is very simple. Actually, I got involved in a major project initiative in India for setting up tinkering labs in schools so that you completely change the thinking of the young student. How do we integrate? I mean, the tinkering lab has a lot of do-it-yourself kits with 3D printing, robotics, IoT, and all of that stuff. How do we integrate this in school education and revolutionize school education? Because these are the students of the future, and they have to be ready for all of this.
Very briefly, I think very important question, very important point. You have to, first of all, inspire students. Inspiration is best provided by bringing them in contact with other successful entrepreneurs and leaders. So bring the leaders, entrepreneurs into the schools much more. Second is try to change the teachers. You have to try and do it in a structured form. One small example at Cornell Tech, the example I gave in Cornell, the research professors out there are required as part of the contract to teach some part of the teaching in the local middle schools. So the different ways of doing it, but I think the more you can inspire the young and change the teachers, because the teachers have to be open to letting it happen.
Shrivats.
Hi, my question is, how do you see the future of the MBA? Specifically, do you see it going more towards generalization, so a student cutting across themes of finance, marketing, etc., and being more of a generalist so they can, connect various issues, or do you see it going more towards specialization, or will both of them coexist?
Yeah, it's a question I was going to address in the second presentation later today, but I'll give you a brief response. So I think it'll be and answer, it'll have both. So there's no shortage of demand in business education. I always tell people that we are so fortunate to be in a domain of growing demand. Our challenge is to be able to create products which have a good product market fit. So there will be a market for the generalist MBAs, and there will be a market for more specialized MBAs. It'll be a question of doing both. So we'll have to do both actually. And I think what we have to become better at is having a more agile method to have a better product market fit.
Dr. Rahul Singh.
Hi, morning. You partially answered the question. So my question goes back 11 years back. We had conversation on what is business school, and you said it depends on how much business, how much is school. You had an answer for this that time. Today, do you change that answer, and what is the component? And second, I'm sorry, I'm adding one more. India is preparing for Technology Vision 2047. Important drivers of that report possible. What should be covered in that?
Okay, on the first question, wait till the afternoon. I might refer to it once again. So if you have patience, let me wait on that because the rest of the group may not actually have heard that class simple framework. So excuse me for not answering that question now. On the technology framework, I think India is doing something very radical. The Chinese model and the American model is really built on large private companies with government support monopolizing the entire space. I think India has accidentally and partially by design and the clever insight, Nanda Nilekani and others, created the India stack, which is an amazing public-private infrastructure that democratizes innovation, digital economy in the country. And I really think that today India is at the forefront. I would not have said this 5 years ago, but today I really think that India is at the forefront of digitalization and digital economy in general in multiple sectors. And I hope it also happens in education. I see a number of interesting initiatives in the area, and I think it's going to pick up in a big way in India. So I'm very optimistic about India and digital right now. Yeah.
Professor Dutta.
1 second. Dr. Rana Singh, just last 2 questions and we'll close.
Yeah.
Thanks for your wonderful deliberation. The Western B schools, they have Center of Excellence in Teaching, Learning and Assessment. So you quoted that we are doing very little about understanding the teaching learning orientation. How AI could transform the process of achieving excellence in teaching, learning and assessment, and some probable areas of specialization understanding next 25 years of management education?
I personally think that is going to have a dramatic impact. That's my personal view. I question whether we'll need even academic advising in the same way as today it happens. I question whether we'll need even tutoring the same way it happens. I don't know, but my gut tells me that technology will do it better in many cases, not in all cases, in many cases. Look at today, a factory. You know, you walk into a factory today. In fact, I was seeing an article today in the Economic Times also. Today, factories have no employees, or very little employees. Just a small number of people doing high-level monitoring of the machine. The machines are fully automated. That level of automation is not yet there in service sector simply because technology is not yet there. The technology is not yet good enough for full automation of service sector jobs. You cannot fully automate a professor. You cannot fully automate hospital work. You cannot fully automate many service sector jobs. But the direction in which the technology is going is that large parts of it will be automated. So today, for example, when I hire professors in my school, I'm often questioning inside my mind, am I making the right decision for the next 30 years, locking the institution into a couple of £100,000 pounds expenditure every single year? So should I not be better investing that in experimenting with technology and trying to see can we do it differently? So we are starting experiments, but as you can see, it's a very sensitive topic because universities are controlled by professors. And if these things threaten the jobs of professors, there is a built-in reaction against. Okay? And there'll be a number of justification given about why a professor human is better and the machine is worse. That's normal, human reaction. But if you actually are open to it, I think the direction, if a chat bot can be the lover of 600 million Chinese males, a lot is possible.
The last question.
Professor Dutta, loved your address. I'm Himanshu Goel and I'm running the Watson X development in India out of Bangalore. It's heartening that you talked about the Indian stack, and I want to let you know the Watson X AI, Gen AI tool of
Can we have the question, please?
Yeah, okay. So my question is, you've been at the best schools of business, and what I'd like to request you is if you can share how you build and you're still building the digital strategy at Oxford for connecting to students and the businesses. That'll be a great giveaway to this audience because I guess we don't lack the capabilities, we just lack communication and marketing at times. So we'll request you to do that.
I'll keep the answer very simple. I think at the end of the day, it requires courage on the part of the leaders to take risks. That's as simple as that. Doesn't matter education or IBM or any other sector, any other company. Because the new futures require you to deviate from your current present. And that requires courage. I think that's the most important element, really. Courage to experiment and to allocate resources towards that.
And on that note, let's close the session. And may I request you to give him a standing ovation. It's been an extraordinary 1 hour, and we really appreciate you coming all the way to India to address 13th Indian Management Conclave.
India is my country, so I love to come back.
So on that note, let's close the session. But I think the opening batsman for today has already hit a ton.
No, thank you
right?
so much. And I hope India wins today, sir. Thank you.